Hello and welcome to Planet Zoo. The 1.17 game update for PC brings a welcome addition, Animal Encounters. Guests can now interact with a selection of animals inside walkthrough habitats. This includes all 7 animals included in the new Barnyard Animal Pack, but also works for 12 animals already in the game, including 5 base game species. Now, with the update, I figured it was time for an upgrade for some of my starter habitat blueprints, making them encounter ready for the animals that have those capabilities. I've been making starter habitats for the workshop since early 2020, and I've never revisited any of them in the 4 years that I've been uploading them. I had been thinking for a while that it was time for an upgrade, and the game update for the Animal Encounters offers the perfect opportunity to introduce some walkthrough enclosures into the starter habitat collection. So today, on top of the 7 new habitats I've built for the Barnyard DLC animals, I'm also introducing upgrades for 12 pre-existing habitats too, starting off with the lemurs. So this is the original that I built. It says ring-tailed lemurs, but I used the same habitat for all 3 varieties of lemur in the game. They have almost identical needs, so I saved myself some time and just used the same one for all 3. For the upgrade though, this is going to be combined into a habitat for all 3 of them, so going to need a lot more space than I've left here. I'll get on with that, and through the magic of editing, I will jump back when this is ready. Lemur Habitat version 2, the walkthrough boogaloo. As you can see, I've done some major updates to this one. It is looking much better than it did before. Guests can now enter the habitat and walk around. Haven't seen any of them venturing off the path just yet with this one, so not sure what's going on with that. Might be a little bit buggy at this stage. Even so, nice to see this as a walkthrough habitat now. And a big change, I've completely redone the hard shelter for this habitat. Much bigger, a lot more open, and a lot more glass windows in here to let some light in. So yeah, really happy I've taken the time to redo this one. Looks a lot better than it did before. Next habitat we're revisiting is the Capybara. This is the original habitat I created for the Capybara. To be honest, this isn't too bad. It's okay. Lot of water and the wading pool, of course. Now I can see here the double fencing. Yeah, we don't need that anymore because you can save stuff outside of the habitat gate now. I'll be getting rid of that. Hard shelter in here and the rest of it, I think that's okay. So we'll do another jump cut and come back to a brand new capybara habitat. Here we go, brand new capybara walkthrough habitat. Using the brand new small guest gate here. This one's working properly. Lemurs are still having trouble. Maybe it's something to do with where I've placed the hygiene station, but it's working in this one, it isn't for the lemurs. But yes, our guests are indeed having encounters with the capybaras here. In terms of inside the habitat, not much has changed. I did change out some of the plants. I had some African plants in here for some reason, so they're gone, and also moved about some of the feeding stations, made it so they're not on the pathway. Aside from that, this was a relatively easy habitat to upgrade. I did get rid of the double fencing. Looking a lot more logical now. Oh, hang on, spotted an encounter. Oh, in the wading pool as well. People aren't meant to go in there. Someone's going to get a telling off from their parents for getting all wet, aren't they? Anyway, that capybara's done. Next I'm moving on to the Capuchin monkey. This is the original design, and oh dear, what was I thinking? I don't know what's going on with this one, but this is absolutely awful. Yep, this is going to be a big rebuild. Jump cut time. Right, brand new Capuchin monkey walkthrough habitat. Took a while to do this one, unpicking some of the strange design choices that I'd made with the original. I've opened up the outside space, much better to view the monkeys this way. Also got some dedicated feeding areas on raised platforms. Previous it was just haphazardly flung on the floor, not great. Also spent a while adding some climbing platforms. Before there was a couple of dead trees that I assume that's what I was using for the climbing enrichment. Very bizarre and no idea why I went that route. Now the hard shelter, I didn't completely rebuild this, but I did spend ages unpicking some very strange scenery piece choices. Still a few legacy pieces in there, but I'm not rebuilding the whole thing, so I'll just ignore those. That's Capuchin monkeys sorted. Next up is the European fallow deer. I don't think this is too bad, but it's very empty, and we've got double fencing issues again. It's weird, it feels half complete. I did the barrier, I did the hard shelter, and just gave up when it came to doing the planting. Let's fix this and revamp. New fallow deer habitat is ready. Added a lot more plants this time. Looking a lot better, like an actual woodland rather than being just big, sparse, empty space. Fix the fencing, so no more double barrier here. We've got a nice single fence. And yes, the deer look like they belong here now. I played around with the terrain a little too, and adding the pathing in this habitat, I think it blends in well. It actually suits being in this one. A few slight adjustments to the hard shelter, but mostly remaining as it was. I think I was going for a camouflaged hard shelter effect here with the green and the dark browns, so just changed out a few of the pieces that I felt were an odd choice originally. Anyway, that's the fallow deer done. Next up is the Indian peafowl. Oh dear. This is the original, and yeah, it's bad. I made about 80 habitats in the first block of builds for the starter collection, and yeah, by the time I got to the Indian peafowl, I was losing motivation, let's say. Even with that, there's no effort gone into this habitat. It's just so plain and boring. We can do a lot better. So big changes for the peafowl. I basically binned everything that was in the original and started again. One of my favourite upgrades so far. I always knew I didn't do a great job with the starter habitat for the original peafowl habitat, so going back and making an effort this time, a big improvement. Peafowl are surprisingly a quite difficult species to build for. They don't like a lot of plants, and you need to keep the habitat quite flat for them to be able to navigate around it. I feel going for a manicured sort of habitat is the way to go. Complete rebuild of the hard shelter, so plenty of nice open space in here for them. It took so long to build this. One of those builds where I try out ideas, and if it doesn't look right, I just scrap it and start again. And there was a couple of occasions that happened for this one. Got there in the end. I think the peafowls are much happier in here as well. Anyway, that's the peafowl habitat done. Next is one that I'm dreading. It's the Japanese macaque. So Japanese macaque looks like the original here. I've done a straight copy of the Capuchin monkey habitat and just decided to go with that. It's a difficult habitat to build, but this is just, there's no excuses there. Time to fix that. So another complete rebuild for the macaques. They're a fussy species to build for. They've got a lot of requirements that have to be fulfilled. One thing I did do to save some time, I've reused the new Llama hard shelter here, just changed the colours. It works well for the macaques and is a vast improvement on what was here previously. Managed to navigate the path through the hard shelter because the guests will walk in here regardless, so we may as well put the path in here. The outside space, this is a fine balance for it being a walkthrough habitat and adding some elevation. Also got in a wading pool. This isn't strictly necessary, but the macaques do like sitting off in here. Most difficult aspect of this habitat is meeting the climbing requirements. Even with the extent of climbing structures in here, this is just about meeting their minimum requirements, which is crazy because it feels like there's a lot. Adding any more would feel excessive. So I've added the minimum to meet the requirements and they'll have to live with that. Something else I'm annoyed about is the macaques needing snow. Bugs me no end when animals demand snow. I feel like that should be a bonus rather than a habitat requirement. No animal desperately needs snow to survive. Anyway, we'll leave the macaques to enjoy the new habitat and move on to the next animal, which is the llama. This is the original llama habitat. Another double barrier going on. Another very empty habitat. The hard shelter, this was a design I came up with years ago and I was so proud of this when I first made it. But through time I've gotten better at making hard shelters and this one just doesn't feel fit for purpose anymore. Also noticing, for some reason I've used a concrete barrier. Now, llamas definitely don't need a concrete barrier, that's just silly. Yeah, and that double fencing really bugs me, so lot of changes for this one. Let's jump cut to the fix. So here's my new llama walkthrough habitat. Llamas surprisingly turned out a little difficult to build for not a lot of choice for South America, temperate and grassland planting. New hard shelter, much more fitting with a llama design. Plenty of space in here, and yeah, it just fits so much nicer than the old breeze block building. The outside space, llamas love a lot of long grass, so it kind of dictates how the terrain will look for this. Like with the fallow deer, adding pathing really helps for breaking up the space a little for in here. Kept the original big tree in the middle, nice focal point there. Would be nice to have more variety with the plants, but is what it is, I guess. Anyway, time for next habitat. Next we're going to be dealing with the quokka. This is my original quokka starter habitat, and I don't think a lot needs changing with this one. This is built to what I would say is my typical standard these days, so there's not much I can do to improve on this. Just a conversion to a walkthrough habitat. Very easy build here for the quokkas. Really didn't change much at all, just changed it into a walkthrough habitat. Something I did change, the keeper gate was on the side for this enclosure for some reason, so I've moved that to the back. Also worth noting, for all of these new habitats, I've put the see me hide me signs outside of the habitat behind the gate. Bit easier to see them out there, but they are linked to a plant within the habitat, so be careful when you delete them that you make sure it's not grouped with the plant. Here we go, got an encounter going on. Hiding in the dry brush there. Good point actually with this habitat. The small hard shelters, the guests can't navigate into here, so at least the quokkas get a little escape inside their hard shelters. But yeah, really didn't change much in here at all. So let's move on. Next upgrade is for the Wallaby. Original red-necked Wallaby habitat here, not too bad, but I don't like this big glass front and the bleached wood panelling here. No, I don't like that at all. I'll be changing that, but the rest I think's okay, so let's get on with the upgrade. So this is the new red-necked Wallaby walkthrough starter habitat. First change was switching from that strange glass panelling to the mesh barrier and the side fencing at the front. I've changed this from that bleached panelling to a custom mesh barrier. The pathing in here, it was a little difficult to get this up to the back, so very short pathing for the walkthrough experience. Not that it matters, because when you change this into the interactive experience, most of the guests will venture off the path and walk up here themselves. It's nice that wherever a keeper can navigate, the guests can now navigate there too, and for most of my habitats it's always accessible for keepers all around the habitat, so not something I need to worry about really. I will say the barrier in here seems excessively high, but the wallabies need 3 meters high to not be able to escape. They do jump that high. I'll even occasionally find some of them jumping on the roof of the hard shelter here, so that high barrier is a necessity. Anyway, that's the wallabies done. Next up we've got the reindeer. So original reindeer starter habitat. Common theme, it is very empty in here. This isn't acceptable for a forest animal. Gone with that old breeze block hard shelter as well, so yeah, gonna be changing that one out. Time for the jump cut. So here's the brand new reindeer walkthrough starter habitat. The low guest gate works well in this habitat. Switched out the hard shelter. I just went with the one that I created for the llama in the end here, and it works well for both the llama and the reindeer. Quite a versatile structure and just so much better than that breeze block monstrosity. Ramped up the planting in here, so it's not just bare grass now like it was before. Reindeer look far more at home with a lot of foliage. Surprisingly, I didn't include more plants in my originals. Maybe they weren't in the game at that point, who knows. Here we go, got a reindeer encounter going on. Lots of reindeer all bunched up together by the water pipe there. You know, you do have a lot more space to roam than just sitting in that corner. Guess we'll leave them to it, and with the reindeers finished there, that's all of my upgrades complete to the starter habitat collection to be ready for animal encounters. Hope you like what I've come up with. All of these upgrades are now on the Steam Workshop, added to the starter habitat collection named as Starter Interactive Walkthrough Habitats. Feel free to let me know what you think in the comments, and as always, thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you in the next video.